Very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for making the time to join us this afternoon. We're doing a really important discussion today about a very important segment of Sarawak's voting population, and that is the Muslim population in Sarawak. Normally in the literature, people refer to this group as the Malay Melanau voting population. So today's discussion is hosted by Rose. Rose, as all of you know, is actually Rise of Social Efforts. It is an NGO based in Kuching, and basically they're trying to promote political education in Sarawak and also to promote fair, free elections in Sarawak. So I'm very happy that we've got very interesting guests with us this afternoon. The first one is YB Fazruddin, who is currently the Adun for N number 6 Tupang. He's currently the Deputy Youth Chief for PBB from 2017 until today. He holds a Master's in Management from University Malaysia Pahang, and he's the President of Kuching City Football Club. He's also been active in the sports scene in Sarawak for many, many years. Our second speaker is Norman Goh. Norman, many people will know, is a former senior journalist from Malaysia Kini. For a very short period, from 2018 to 2020, he was Special Functions Officer to the Malaysian Foreign Minister. He holds a degree for University Malaysia Sarawak and is currently finishing off a Master's in Public Policy with University Malaya. On top of this busy studying, he's also currently an independent journalist with the South China Morning Post, and he's also helping AFP in Malaysia. Our third speaker is Abba Zulkifi, who was formerly a press secretary to the Minister Awards from 2018 to 2020, and is currently the Deputy Chairman of Sarawak PKR. And my final guest is Abdul Halil, who is the Chairman of Parti Amanah Negara Sarawak branch. Abdul Halil is a civil engineering graduate from Leeds University in the UK. So to start off with, I thought I'll give some very basic information about the Muslim voters in Sarawak. So if you look at the population figure, the Malay Melanau population in Sarawak is approximately just over 30% of Sarawak's population. In terms of their voting power, currently there's 22 Malay seats in Sarawak and plus 9 Melanau seats. So altogether, the Muslim population in Sarawak will decide about 31 out of 82 Dewan Undangan Negeri seats in Sarawak, and that works out to about 38%. Currently, PBB, Parti Persatuan Bumiputera Sarawak, holds 47 seats in 82 seat DUN. This means that they've gone over the 50% threshold. So in reality, PBB can actually rule on its own. But we all know PBB is part of the larger GPS coalition government. And this leads me to the second point, which is that since the 1970s, it's widely understood in Sarawak that in terms of the government, it's always been dominated by the PBB. And the unique thing about the PBB compared to all the other Bumiputera parties in Malaysia is that PBB has a very strict line that draws in the middle. So PBB actually consists of two separate parties. One is the Bumiputera wing and the other is the Persaka wing. As a very rough guide, the Bumiputera wing represents the Muslim interest and the Persaka wing represents the non-Muslim interest. So, and also in Sarawak, it's widely known that most of the Malay Melanau seats are strongly in favor of the PBB. So that's the reason why many people will tell you, in terms of Sarawak politics, all the Malay Melanau seats are regarded as PBB's fixed deposit. Now, because of the strong hold on the Sarawak government by PBB, you can see that since the 1970s, PBB has always held on to the chief minister's post in Sarawak. So from 1970 to 1981, it was held by Tun Rahman Yaakob. Then after that, his nephew took over, Taib Mahmud, who ruled from 1981 to 2017. Then for a very short period, we had Adnan Satem. And after that is the current Chief Minister, Abba Johari. Now, of course, despite the fact that PBB has been dominating Malay Muslim politics in Sarawak for a very long time, this doesn't mean they're not without any challenges. So if you go back to Sarawak's recent political history, you can see that there's been various parties set up to try to challenge PBB's hold on the Muslim vote in Sarawak. Some of the more successful one, or some of the one that attracted a lot of attention, including Paja back in the 70s. Then they were followed in the 1980s by a party called Permas. And in recent years, you got a whole string of political parties try to challenge the Muslim vote. And this include PAS, PKR, Bersatu, and Amanah. So what I'll do is I'll start off by inviting all of today's speakers to answer several very basic questions about PBB. Yeah? So the first one obviously is, how do they define the core political interests of the Malay or the Muslim community in Sarawak? And what is the reason why the Muslim Malay community in Sarawak always support the PBB? What is the magic of PBB in terms of holding on to their vote? And also a lot of people are asking, PBB is such a powerful position. As I mentioned, they can actually rule on their own. So why do they want to stick with GPS, a coalition government? And if they are so powerful, is it actually good for Sarawak, which you know is a multiracial population with multi-faiths? And what is the likely key issues in terms of the Malay Muslim community in Sarawak for the coming election? So perhaps we'll start with our YB, Fazruddin, who is the youth chief for PBB. YB, would you like to start? Yeah, you have to turn off your mute now.
Thank you so much, James, for inviting me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon to all the panel. Selamat menjalani ibadah berpuasa dalam bulan Ramadan. And yeah, very interesting. When you say, I would like to try to answer all the question that you've stated just now by starting with, I'm sure all of us hear this a lot. In Sarawak consists of different races living in harmony since the beginning of time. So if one person to look at Malaysia from outside Malaysia, they would know that Malaysia is a majority Muslim country, not knowing the fact that it is different from Peninsular Malaysia and East of Malaysia. And from the viewpoint of the people in Semenanjung, they would see Muslim, Melayu, Melanau Muslim in Sarawak, maybe they may be able to lump us in a group with them. But when you are in Sarawak, you know that we are a totally different we have a totally different kind of upbringing. We have a totally different kind of culture that have been embodied to us since we were a kid, because of the fact that we are living in a multi-racial state. And of course, given, like I said just now, from a Malayan or Semenanjung Malaysia vantage point of view, they might, I think I can say that, this is my personal opinion, we are a bit more progressive than our friends in Malaya. I mean, because for once, we don't share the usual barometer of political success defined in some West Malaysian politicians. For instance, the Malay-Muslim supremacy and the quest for Islamic State. We might not share the same direction with them. And what we want is our life to be unchanged. We want to keep living in harmony with the different races. We don't want it to be tampered with, and we can do our own religious, everyone practicing their own religious belief in harmony. I mean, that is the most important thing that we should understand. That has been going on since the beginning, and we want to keep that intact. That is why sometimes I got the impression from my friends from Semenanjung, Sarawakian Muslim is very different in the sense that you guys are a bit, what do you call it, a bit moderate. Yes, I agree, we are moderate. But at the same time, religious teaching is something that we have to do. In Islam, we call it a kewajiban. That one, no issue, no question about it, we need to do it. But in practicing Islam in Sarawak, we are very moderate as we understand the needs of our different families from different races and different religion. With that context, so that means the Malay Muslim would want that to be intact, and how do we ensure that to be happening? Okay, comes to the question of the political party, PBB. Of course, any political party would want to bring development in the state. Would want to bring development to the people, social well-being, wealth, health, safety, security. You just ask any political party, that is the main objective. Untuk memberi kesejahteraan kepada seluruh rakyat. PBB is also the same thing. And PBB, like you said, consists of initially 2 different parties, which represent the whole lot of the races in Sarawak. So PBB itself represents the whole races in Sarawak except for the Chinese. So PBB itself knows the core of Sarawak itself. I think that is the strength of PBB. The strength that we are going to maintain and we are going to use in the coming state election. I'm not even going to touch about the policy that the government have been doing. Yang Amat Berhormat have been implementing policies, of course, to benefit the people of Sarawak. We're just talking about how the Malay Muslim vote in the upcoming Sarawak PRN. So in relation to PBB, and of course, like you said just now, 31 out of 82 seats comprises of the YB, the Malay Muslim. So we want to uphold that 31 out of the 82. How do we do it? Of course, first to ensure we tell the people that, look, PBB is the core party of Sarawak. This is our background. We consist of different races working together. When you are in one party working together, it's easier rather than you are dealing with a person from a different party when you have issues. When you are facing sensitive issues, it's easier for you to discuss among your brothers within the party. So that is why I'm convinced that that is the core strength of PBB. Right. And
Thank you.
having just a bit more, having 47 seats out of 82, would that make PBB, what they call it, we can rule on its own? Is it politically good for GPS and for Sarawak? Or should there be any opposition in the Malay Muslim area? Principally, we should and we must have an opposition party wherever we go to have that check and balance. Like I said just now, PBB will remain the backbone of Gabungan Parti Sarawak and the state government. A strong and stable PBB would benefit GPS as it will assist us in continuing to govern Sarawak. In any political coalition, there must be a backbone. Otherwise, the dynamics of the political group will always be marked by instability. For instance, the perception of PN government is an unstable government. That have created a lot of problems since PN took over from PH. The stock market have been going up and down, maybe investment have been going down a bit because of the perception of instability. We are not talking about whether there is the real issue of instability, just the perception. So, an instability can be shown by having just a marginalized number of seats, more than half. That can be constructed as instability. And when people prey on that issue of instability, you've seen the effect it has given to our nation. So that is why I think it is important as well to have a backbone party But going back to my initial sharing about PBB, there will be no one particular races being the dominant races. As you know, PBB comprises of different races in Sarawak. Thank you. I think that should be beginning.
Thank you, YB. Abba Zulkifi, would you like to start your opening statement?
Okay, thank you, James. And then good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Prof James and Saudara Nomad, which given the opportunity to me to appear this afternoon in this session. That very important topics that we are going to discuss this afternoon. I think I would like to deliver in Bahasa Melayu so that everybody can understand. I hope lebih ramai orang Melayu menonton pada petang ini dengan satu harapan supaya mendapat sedikit pengetahuan berkenaan dengan apa yang kita akan perbincangkan. Jadi saudara James dan YB, orang muda, tahniah. Mudah-mudahan sihat walafiat dan terima kasih kerana hadir bersama. Abang Halil daripada Amanah, terima kasih. Dan rakan seperjuangan saya dulu dalam Stratcom. Terima kasih kerana datang. Jadi saya percaya perbincangan kita petang-petang ini akan mendapat liputan yang luas kerana tajuk yang akan kita bincangkan ialah berkenaan dengan undi Melayu Muslim dalam pilihan yang akan datang. That's Malay Muslim votes in upcoming election. Jadi bagi saya satu tajuk yang ditunggu-tunggu oleh rakyat Sarawak serta pengkaji politik dan peramal politik tanah air. Kerana sebenarnya kita ketahui bahawa Melayu Sarawak, Melayu Sarawak, Melanau adalah satu komponen masyarakat yang sejak dulu menjadi ukuran kepada perkembangan dan kemajuan politik Sarawak. Kalau kita balik kepada sejarah, even sebelum merdeka, Melayu merupakan orang yang berpengaruh dalam pemerintahan British. Ras perabangan merupakan orang yang berpengaruh dalam pemerintahan British pada ketika itu. Jadi kedudukan Melayu dalam mana-mana satu pilihan raya yang telah berlalu sejak kita merdeka adalah sebahagian besarnya memberi sokongan kepada PBB. Why? Mengapa berlaku sedemikian? Jadi teras kepentingan orang Melayu di Sarawak ini ialah agama. Seperti mana yang dihuraikan sedikit awal tadi oleh YB berkenaan dengan kepentingan agama itu, tapi saya kaitkan sedikit dengan perkembangan perjalanan politik kita di Sarawak yang menyebabkan PBB itu mendapat sokongan yang padu daripada orang-orang Melayu, Melanau, Kedayak di Sarawak. Kerana doktrin agama ini merupakan satu kepercayaan yang tidak boleh dipisahkan. Sebenarnya kehidupan kita di Sarawak ini, terutama sekali Melayu, Melanau, Melayu, born to be Muslim. Kecuali sedikit masyarakat Melanau yang sebahagiannya adalah Muslim dan sebahagiannya masih Christian. Dan ada mungkin juga sebahagiannya masih pagan. Jadi apa-apa masalah yang akan timbul ataupun masalah penyelesaian, akhirnya orang Melayu ini, orang Islam ini akan merujuk kepada agama. That is the very fundamental referral point to every problem and every solution that Muslim is facing. They will come back to religion. Itu sudah pasti. Ya, kita tahu walaupun kekuatan perkembangan agama Islam di Sarawak tidaklah sehebat mana, Tetapi isu agama ini memainkan peranan yang cukup sentimental di kalangan penganut-penganut agama. Sebab itu bagi saya teras kekuatan PBB itu di kawasan Melayu Melanau ialah pegangan agama. Kerana mereka beranggapan bahawa PBB ini satu komponen, satu parti yang boleh menjamin agama itu terus berkembang dan terus maju. Orang Melayu kalau didengar agama ini tergugat ataupun digugat, mereka pasti akan tidak selesa dan mereka pasti akan mencari jalan keluar. Sebab itu kalau kita lihat, saya tidak tahu di Kuching YB, tetapi di kawasan pedalaman, kawasan pesisir, sewaktu kempen pilihan raya, inilah satu isu yang dipermainkan oleh pengempen-pengempen Melayu kita kerana ketakutan hilang kuasa Melayu. Itu teras asas bagi saya mengapa orang-orang Melayu ini terus menyokong PBB. Dan teras kedua yang saya fikir, mengapa orang Melayu terus berada dalam PBB, terus berada menyokong PBB, adalah kerana mereka memikirkan ataupun didendangkan dengan keselesaan. Walhal, apa yang berlaku underground? I'm talking apa yang berlaku underground, yang saya banyak berjalan di luar bandar, di kawasan pedalaman, yang sebenarnya orang-orang Melayu kita yang menduduki pesisiran pantai tidaklah begitu selesa seperti mana yang digambarkan. Kalau umpamanya ada berkesempatan, saudara Norman dan saudara James, saya boleh menjemput bersama untuk menjelajah di kawasan Saribas, di kawasan orang Melanau di Tanjung Manis atau di Pulau Beruit. Maknanya keselesaan yang didendangkan oleh pengempen-pengempen suatu pilihan raya adalah merupakan satu dendangan fata morgana. Itu bagi saya. Sebab saya orang yang bergerak di lapangan. Dan sudah semestinya orang Melayu ini saya melihat, orang Melanau ini saya melihat bahawa penerapan kepercayaan kepada PBB itu seolah-olah doktrin agama yang tidak boleh ditukar. Itu kehebatan PBB, itu kehebatan pemimpin-pemimpin PBB yang terdahulu sampai sekarang. Dan pilihan raya akan datang, saya tidak berani menjamin. Kerana kesedaran masyarakat di kala ini, kalau berbanding dengan 10 tahun, 20 tahun yang lepas, mungkin anjakannya ada dan momentum sokongan kepada PBB memang ada perubahan dari masa ke semasa. Itu dia dua trust yang saya agak mengapa orang Melayu Melanau menyokong PBB. Of course, pembangunan itu satu keperluan, tetapi itu bukan merupakan satu kehendak ataupun satu sebab mengapa mereka terus-menerus menyokong PBB. Jadi selain daripada itu, saya melihat PBB ini adalah satu komponen parti hasil gabungan daripada Bumi Putra dan Pesaka. Dan saya melihat di sana juga mengapa ada kekuatan disebab gabungan tersebut. Tetapi bagi saya itu merupakan satu sebab yang kecil. Sebab yang besar ialah kebijaksanaan pemimpin-pemimpin PBB terdahulu yang dipimpin oleh Tun Abdul Rahman Yaakob pada ketika itu boleh menggabungkan Bumi Putra dengan Pesaka yang menyebabkan mereka menjadi kuat dan menjadi cukup dominan dalam kerangka politik Sarawak.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe you can come back to that point later. Can I ask the other Abang, would you like to give your opening statement?
Okay, thank you, James. Yeah.
Abang Halil?
Okay, Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Selamat tengah hari. You are in Australia, James.
Yes.
What time now? 5 o'clock.
It's okay.
Okay, I'll try to answer all the question in a few, but I may be very compressed. Okay, regarding the core political interests of the Malay Melanau or the Malay Muslim, is that they wanted to sustain the state leadership, their involvement in state leadership, their share in the state development and the well-being of the community in the state. That is especially their religion. They are very sensitive, as what Abang Zul has been saying. Then when you go solidly, why the Malays are solidly behind PBB since 1970s? This song is being played, as what Abang Zul said just now. If we don't support PBB, you will lose the CMC. Okay? This song is a taboo to the Malays. Even if you put it at 5, you put somebody not really, they will still support the fellow. Then you will lose the CMC. We will lose in the share in the state development. We will be also, our religion and our interest will be jeopardized. These are the things. And the second thing I noticed where that sustained PBB was PBB has the support of the big brother partner, UMNO, in Semenanjung Malaysia. And then the Malay community actually, they feel at ease with this support. Fairly, majority they feel at ease with support. Actually, to me, I'm trying to compress all my answer to answer for question. Now, what happens that the big brother UMNO is undecisive. So PBB is undecisive also now. So when big brother quit the end, then what happened next we don't know. Before August or what? Okay, I'm not going to drag to that. Can PBB hold on to the Muslim board? Yes, it can. I have to say that yes, it can. Because putting aside money politics, money politics, they still sing the same song. If you don't vote PBB, you will lose the Malay CMC. It will go to other people who become the CM. All this kind of issue will come out again. So this is the what I observed. They can stand further, and then is PBB in the position with now PBB in the position where they have a good position. Of course, to me, it's not good at all for GPS or for Sarawak as a whole. We need check and balance. As YB Fazruddin said just now, we need check and balance at whatever level and whatever form, or else we will never progress. We will never progress. We will be kept like that. And PBB, to me, if you ask me about PBB and GPS or whatever it is, PBB leadership now is most of the leadership is as old as the party. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah? Most of them, not all. Some are still young, like Fazruddin, still young. PBB formula, all this while, has been 31 seat. All Malay Melanau or Malay Muslim seat, 31 number must be controlled. Yeah? And then plus the 11 from Pesaka, that make them 42, they can form the government. Now, then strengthened by SUP, but now taken away by the AP, most of the seat. And then strengthened by some of the non-Malay Muslim seat from the other party, like PRS or what. That is the formula. That is the formula. So in politics, in politics, nothing is impossible and nothing is predictable to me. See? So a group you may thought to be not united may become united. And then COVID effect is about to be felt. Remember, it is about to be felt. Do not underrate the effect of COVID. And I tell you, I don't want to be the government of the day if it is COVID. Now, I feel scared because we have no money, people are all stressed, and the pain on the ground, you have not checked. It is really painful on the people who live around. And then now come 18 years old. Come 18 years old voters who are always rebellious and this. So in politics, nothing is possible and nothing is predictable. And to be PBB have to sit down and who want to sustain themselves, they have to sit down, revamp themselves. I'm sorry, I have to be very frank. Should there be opposition? There must be opposition on the ground, check and balance also, and then likely issues in there. I think it's basically basic lack of infrastructure development is still on after 50 years. Youth issues, job opportunities, and also the land issues which I observe. I think that's all from me.
Okay, terima kasih. Norman, as a long-term observer of Sarawak politics, what do you think of the answers given by our three political practitioners?
I think then it's actually not too far than what are my views on as I follow the development of politics in Sarawak. And particularly, I mean, we don't really discuss much about Malay politics and its trend, how it's developed over the years. I mean, although I've been a journalist over in West Malaysia for a number of years, I usually go back and always keep track of what's going on in Sarawak. I would say, listening to YB Fazruddin, Abang Halil, as well as Abang Zul, I can see the different aspects and how PBB positioned itself, and how Pakatan Harapan, as well as how they position themselves, as well as the opposition politics in Sarawak. So I would like to point out here is that Sarawak Malay politics is really much deeply intertwined with the historical aspects and influences from the view of grassroots politics itself. I have to bear in mind to a lot of listeners who are following this discussion is that despite PBB still holding on to the core power within the state, the holding on to the influence and powers in the state, they still maintain the image and identity of a secular Sarawak. The Sarawak is the only region, now they don't call state, in Malaysia with no official religion. Sabah has instituted that in 1976. However, what I'm trying to point out here as well is the growing question is that the Malayan-centric type of Malay Muslim politics are slowly creeping into the state. Now that remains a question, and that's what's also worrying a lot of the non-Muslim voters as well. So let's look at PBB itself. It's been for so many years since the start. Actually, PBB is not PBB from the start of Sarawak. It was Berjasa and Pesakan, and after that they formed PBB later on. But important to understand how it develops over time. Number one, I'd like to share is that there is a need for the identity of establishing the dominance and influence to remain as the core part of the Malay politics of Sarawak. So these convoluted relations between race and religion identity is not new, although it's not being discussed openly. But we understand that without the presence of the Sultanate in the state, we have the governance system. The fundamental key in Malay Muslim politics places on the following areas I would like to touch on. Number one is the protection of identity of Melayu, the Malay itself, and dominance or influence in political power. I think that has been mentioned by Abang Halil and even YB Fazruddin also. It's one of the few things that is balancing the act, because if PBB were to be seen as the overall ruling the state on its own, it will not augur well in the next few generations even. It will be even more harmful instead. So that's why the coalition of various parties of groups of even supports from different political parties within the coalition to represent different groups of society will be the way forward, even to win the election. Secondly, I'd like to point out is balancing the harmony between race and religion within a multiracial, multi-religion community. But still, we've seen what Abang Halil also pointed out, pulling the cards of race and religion in the facade of so-called waning powers of influence. A sort of fear-mongering tactics are still being used. So although most Malay Muslims are very much in the Kuching-centric, the areas such as Samarahan, Saribas, Muka, and some northern areas in Sarawak have this say, and also influencing the holding power until today. So the political leaders among Malay Muslim community in Sarawak still lingers around family relations, political elites. So it's rather a small circle for political leaders to be rising up the hierarchy of the patronage system. It's not that PBB, we see that nearly all, I think all of the leaders are representing the Malay Muslim majority areas are from PBB, but we are also seeing some new people coming up in PBB. I'm noticing some new faces coming out in PBB youth. I think YB Fazruddin don't want to unveil the cards yet, but I'm seeing some patterns going on. So I think I would say the PH is not even prepared, but PBB is already prepared to actually put out new faces coming up. When I talk about the hierarchy of patronage system, the strength of this grip, right, of political control and influence continue to prosper and it solidifies with clear line of succession with other figures or leaders. So once after, let's say, Abang Joe, who's next? We know who's next. Who's next? There's a clear line of succession. We know who's the leader. So that it gives a sense of assurance to voters on the ground. If we were talking about Malay, Melanau kind of voters as well, even in the Muslim majority areas, a sense of assurance of continuity and survivability of the politics itself. So PBB, right, it has been more effective. In fact, it's far more effective than UMNO on its role as the core, the base for GPS. Even back then when they were in Sarawak Alliance, before formation of Barisan Nasional, they have been the core ground, core party within the coalition. So within this GPS, right, PBB has been very pivotal. They are not going to say that, oh, just because we are going to form the federal government, we're going to form the federal government. No, GPS has been very tactful in carefully making the decision and also positioning themselves when it comes to cooperation, because at the end of the day, they got to think the idea of the branding that they want to sell is that we are fighting for the interests of the state. And that's why we have the autonomy within the GPS. And that's why and it's a state-based coalition. This sort of idea sells very well to a lot of those who are not happy with the federalist kind of system. So they got to think, right, the tactfulness of GPS here in making decision. And that's why there's always being referred to as the kingmaker when it comes to any political crisis on the national level. So I think, you know, in years to come, because they made a very good move. Imagine in 2018, just matter of 2 months, 2 to 3 months, Sarawak BN at that time, they were quick to quit Barisan Nasional and quickly form Gabungan Parti Sarawak. At the end of the day, it's not only for survivability, because they know that this kind of branding and notion really sells on the ground. And to answer one of the question by Prof James is that, how will PBB continue in the next few elections? I think they are also at the juncture of reinventing the wheel, reinventing themselves. Because if they continue to be where they are today with practicing of the system of political elites and patronage, they are likely going to be facing a lot of pushbacks, because there will be a lot of the young leaders from within their own party who are pushing for more progressive ideas, and the voter trend will continue to change because there are a lot more young voters coming up to be registered in the coming next elections. Back to you, Prof. James.
Thank you very much, Norman, for that great overview of Sarawak politics. But I'm more interested in the Malay side, so I want to come back. And I think it's really, really interesting in this discussion that if I'm hearing correctly, the two Abangs have confirmed that that the Malay Muslim vote will still support PBB. In other words, they think that their party will not do very well, and because of the so-called the play by the PBB that if we lose power, the Malays will be marginalized, Muslim will be marginalized. We will not have the chief minister's position. If this is the case, then what hope is there that anybody can actually challenge PBB? The reason I said it is because that was exactly the sort of narrative that we found in Peninsular Malaysia when UMNO was at the height of its power. But yet UMNO actually faced a lot of challenge internally. And of course, because of the Najib Rosmah factor, they lost in 2018. Now, are you all telling me that PBB is so powerful that for the next 10, the next 2 elections, the next 4 elections, whatever, that PBB will maintain its hold over the Malay Muslim community? And also, even though the discussion here is mostly on the Malay Muslim community, I would like to emphasize what I said earlier, that half of PBB is actually a Pesaka wing, and that is the Dayak wing. So how does this religious angle play with the Pesaka wing, and how do you play religion when you know that it's actually a very dangerous thing? Because if you play the Islamic card, then basically you are sort of shaping Sarawak's politics very similar to the sort of pattern that we see in Peninsular Malaysia. And even YB Fast has confirmed that we do not want that. We want Sarawak politics to be unique. We like to live in this multiracial community. We like to think that we want to take the middle path. So YB Fast, can I come back to you again and perhaps ask a very simple question? If PBB keep playing this game that, the Muslims will be marginalized if we lose the chief minister position, how long do you think they can play this card and get away with it? YB?
Thank you, Prof. James. I strongly disagree with the narrative. Actually, these are the perception that different parties have been using to what do you call it, to attack PBB, to gather support from the people using this kind of narrative. Actually, like you said, ever since 1970s, 1980s, this narrative have been used to attack PBB, and still PBB was able to win the election and win the hearts and mind of the people. So how do we do it? It's not using that narrative. Okay, first of all, we need to identify what does the Malay Muslim wants? What does the Malay Muslim voters want? Are we PBB able to give what they want? And because of that, yes, we can. And yes, we have been giving what the Malay Muslim voters needs. Because of that, that is why the support for PBB from the Malay Muslim voters have been strong, and I'm convinced it will continue to support PBB. For instance, one of the issues which is very important for the Malay Muslim is, of course, religion. Religion is practiced almost freely all over Sarawak. Even though the fact that we are living in a multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious state, multi-religious Sarawak, and yet we are able to practice religion freely. Sometimes people take that for granted, you know. The Dayak does not even raise an issue of the practice done by the Muslim. So that have been going on since day one. So that is what we want to maintain. One, religious Malay Muslim are very sensitive on religious. So what are their needs? The other needs: education, socio-economic, and PBB government have been able to provide that for them. Because we are talking about Malay Melanau voters, that's why I'm stressing on that. The government
thank you, YB.
To all, actually.
Yeah. So YB, I understand where you're coming from because you're repeating the same points from your opening statement. So maybe I'll divert this question to the two Abangs. Since you both think that PBB is still so strong in maintaining the Malay Melanau votes, if that is the case, then why do you bother standing as opposition candidates? I mean, it's a very blunt question. I mean, why do you bother? Because as you know, right, if you try to fight PBB, for example, when you talk about using the issue of religion, we can say that, you know, if people are really, if the Malay Melanau community really interested in religion, they should vote for PAS, because PAS come out openly and said that, you know, Islam is number one. We want to set up Islamic State. So why bother? But the record is that, you know, all the PAS candidates in Sarawak, 99% lose the deposit. It is also in Malay majority areas. So my question is that why bother fight PBB if you think that you don't stand a chance? Maybe Abang Zul, you want to start that off?
Ya, terima kasih Prof James. Saya belum habis sebetulnya tadi, tetapi saya tak apa, biar saya jawab terus berkenaan dengan apa yang
silakan.
Saya masih melihat bahwa agama itu memainkan peranan yang penting yang sangat mempengaruhi pengundi di kawasan-kawasan Malay Melanau. Sangat mempengaruhi di kawasan-kawasan Malay Melanau kerana mereka takut kehilangan ketua menteri yang terdiri daripada orang Melayu Melanau Islam. This is a fact yang kita dapati di akar umbi. This is the fact. Selain daripada itu, mengapa kita harus masih ingin melawan PBB walaupun kita tahu bahwa ianya memang kuat. Dari dulu memang kuat. Sebab itu saya katakan tadi, kekuatan PBB bukan saja berpunca daripada isu-isu pembangunan, tetapi kebijaksanaan pimpinan Melayu PBB sejak awal dipimpin oleh Rahman, Abdul Mahmud, Tok Nan, dan sekarang Abang Jo. Jadi of course dalam perjalanan politik mereka berhadapan dengan situasi-situasi yang berlainan. Of course, kita sebagai NGOs ataupun kita sebagai political party, kita melihat dan menegur di mana satu-satu perkara itu tidak bertepatan dengan kehendak masyarakat. Apa yang YB katakan tadi, mereka memenuhi kehendak, keperluan masyarakat. Ya betul, sebahagian daripada dia ataupun sebagian kecil daripada kehendak masyarakat itu tertunai. Tetapi dalam kerangka penglihatan kita sebagai orang politik, sebagai NGO, apa yang dilakukan oleh PBB, akar GPA sekarang, sejak 50 tahun, 7 tahun yang lepas, tidak menepati kehendak apa yang diperlukan oleh masyarakat. Saya sebagai anak yang lahir luar bandar dan saya mengetahui dengan begitu mendalam perkara ini. Sebab itu, walau sesusah manapun, saya masih kekal melawan, saya masih kekal mengkritik PBB kerana saya melihat ada banyak perkara yang tidak dilaksanakan seperti apa yang dikehendaki oleh masyarakat mengikut peredaran zaman dan mengikut keberadaan negeri kita yang kaya raya dengan sumber hasil mahsul negeri. Sebab itulah saya walaupun kekal menjadi pemangkal, kita masih tetap menjadi pihak yang akan checks and balance di peringkat akar umbi, sekalipun kita tetap akan meneruskan usaha kita. Kerana kalau kita melihat propaganda yang selalu dimainkan, selalu bermain di bibir adalah keselesaan. Saya melihat keselesaan ini dalam persepsi secara apa namanya akar umbi. Saya melihat keselesaan yang dikatakan itu tidaklah menepati kehendak keselesaan standar. Apa yang saya maksudkan? Okey, orang kampung itu kenyang makan. Dia kenyang makan, perut berisi, perut penuh. Tetapi apakah makanan mereka itu menepati kehendak zat-zat keperluan badan? Itu persoalan itu. Persoalan itu mungkin dalam bentuk yang remeh, kecil, tetapi impaknya besar kepada pertumbuhan manusia itu sendiri. Dan kedua, keselesaan yang dikatakan. Kalau kita melihat rumah-rumah di kampung bersesak, duduk di rumah kecil, atap zinc without ceiling, dan duduk keadaan dalam panas. Itu keselesaan? Tidak. Sebab saya sendiri pun saya pernah melawat ke luar negara melihat keselesaan itu menepati kehendak. Rumah itu rumah bagus, kedudukan persekitarannya tidak bersesak, sanitary-nya bagus, peparitan dia bagus. At least mungkin ada aircon, bekalan air bersih mencukupi, bekalan air bersih sebenarnya yang bersih, itu keselesaan sebenar. Tetapi apa yang berlaku di luar bandar, trust yang menyokong, memberi sokongan kepada PBB tadi, selain daripada agama, ialah dendangan keselesaan. Dendangan keselesaan yang dimain-mainkan sehingga menjadi kepercayaan kepada orang kampung, hidup macam itu pun selesa. Dan pandangan saya tidak. Saya, WB dan Abang Halil mungkin selesa. Sebab kita duduk di bandar, kita duduk di rumah berhawa dingin, kita duduk dalam persekitaran elok. Tetapi adik kakak saya yang duduk di kampung masih dalam keadaan yang terlalu tercerut. Sebab itu kita masih kekal mengkritik dan melawan di mana satu tempat yang betul. Kita bukan melawan membabi buta, tidak. Saya dengan WB Fazruddin tidak bermusuh, saya dengan WB PBB lain tidak bermusuh. Kita melawan dasar dan polisi yang tidak begitu tepat.
Okay. Abang Halil, why bother? Since you also admit that it's very difficult to defeat.
I say yes, they can win again. They can still win. I talk this from data. I talk this from the percentage of change that I've observed on the ground. And observe this from the level of change that the Malay voters are on. That's why I say yes. But as for myself, I believe in, I think from my great-grandparents, PANAS, Parti Negara Sarawak, we are a multiracial party. And I still believe that even my party is Amanah, but we are multiracial. Inclusivity is our main target. We have to have a party. We don't stop any other race to enter our party. Chinese or Iban or Malay, they can enter our party. There is inclusivity. I believe in multiracialism. And number two, I believe in check and balance. If the YB, I tell you the truth, you can say that you have done a lot to the ground. I went to the ground. Even Kampung Baru next to Unimas. Kampung Baru, Kampung Endap, not far enough. Water supply problem is still a problem. That is 50 years ago. We have so much money that we cut from the trees. You see? So this is, I'm a bit emotional already now, hold it. So basically to me, check and balance must be there. I must stand there in order to make sure the YB stand on this put to work on the ground. Check and balance. So basically, I feel that the narrative that the fear-mongering is not there, it is still there. It is like a ghost now. Just mention it immediately, the vote will change at the 11th hour. So this thing, okay, I think that's all I can tell you then.
Yeah. Norman, should the opposition not bother and just let PBB walk over the Melanau seats?
I think Wabi Fazruddin will be very happy if I say they just walk over, but I don't think it will be possible. They will continue to contest, because one thing to actually look, right? Yes, we can see that the different trend when it comes to voting on federal election and state election. That's why back then, during the early days, Sarawak ruling coalition, they were smart to separate both elections so that they can focus on different kind of issues. But we see from 2018 itself is the perception that UMNO no longer dominates that sort of Malay Muslim kind of politics. So even in the case of Sarawak, right, it also gives an idea to the voters on the ground that if they see that there is a huge problem with corruption in the state, they will be thinking of voting them out. They will not be scared, and no longer be scared to vote, because look at it, right, from the last election, civil service, the changes in the trend in the votes from the civil service as well, armed forces, they were among the factors in changing the votes. Same goes with the usual fixed deposit seats in some of the rural areas. That's why Pakatan Harapan managed to take some of the seats back then. But you know, in this kind of case, if Pakatan Harapan managed to sell that sort of branding in maybe not this election, maybe in the next election, it will still be a challenge to PBB, because one thing for sure is that although it is widely accepted and also perceived that the grounds on the Malay Muslim areas may continue to support PBB, that will change in the next election, because people are no longer afraid to make the changes so that it's to make sure that things are being done properly. So it's not safe even.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, things can change at any time, so nothing is certain. Okay, YB, final question. I think this is the most relevant one. We've covered the parts about why PBB is very difficult to dislodge. But in 2018, after the fall of the Barisan National Government at the federal level, I'm sure there was a lot of discussion within the Sarawak BN, and it was called, about pulling out. Eventually, they did pull out, reconstitute as a GPS. Since you keep telling us this afternoon that PBB stands for multiracialism, stands for diversity, stands for moderation, and stands for Sarawak, I think we all agree that this is actually a good thing. So the obvious question is that, why don't GPS come together as a single party? Why maintain the four parties?
Thank you, Prof. That I would not be able to answer you, because I think, of course, we will leave it to the leader. But as a young leader like myself, I'm not talking on behalf of the party. I'm seeing things. We might have a change in the future, maybe like 20 years, 30 years down the road, to have a two-party system. I'm open to a lot of alternative in political development, because as far as I'm concerned, as a young leader, to me, it's maybe some see me as naive, but to me, it's as easy as you performing your job, you delivering the best to the people, and let the people decide for themselves. Then after that, you have what they call it. After you're done, then in Malay we call it tiada sesal, no regret. We have done our best. To me, I would like to live my political career along that line. And
okay, Thank you, YB.
Cannot answer for the how can.
No, because you mentioned that you all believe in the Sarawak value, so it's obvious that there's really not much difference between what you believe in. There's not much difference between your political philosophy with PRS, SUPP, and PDP. So I'm just wondering. Now the two Abangs, then the obvious question I ask you, since you also said that one of the strengths of PBB is that they project a localized image. If that is the case, why don't PKR, Amanah, all these people join together and form a Sarawak-based opposition while link up with the federal opposition? Right?
Okay. Secara individu, saya sangat mencintai pelbagai kaum. That is why my first political career hidup dalam snack.
Yeah, it's okay. We are not interested in your political career. The question, the question is very simple. Because you mentioned that one of the strengths of PBB is that they play on local sentiment. Since we all agree that they play on local sentiment, so the question is that since you have not much difference between, say, Parti Amanah, PK, all this, why don't you guys all get together and form a Sarawak-based opposition against PBB? Because then you'll be fighting on the same ground.
No, there is some issues that haven't settled. If I allowed to speak it out, tetapi memakan bahasa yang panjang, saya boleh huraikan daripada Tun Abdul Rahman, PN Type, Tok Nan, and then sekarang Abang Jo. Tetapi masa tidak mencukupi, maka saya.
Ya, tapi awak boleh bagi summary boleh.
Pardon, can you repeat? I can't hear properly.
Yeah. Just give us a summary of your argument. Why?
Okay, kalau zaman Tun Abdul Rahman, dikatakan sebagai orang yang terlalu mementingkan koloni, pala habis ditebang, dan pengagihan kekayaan tidak sama rata di antara bandar dan luar bandar. Satu. Di zaman PN Taib Mahmud, beliau dilihat kumpulan seperti kami ini sebagai orang yang terlalu rasuah, and then menggadaikan hak tanah adat Bumi Putra dijual dan diagih kepada kroni-kroni kapitalis. Cuma di zaman Tok Nan, yang kita daripada pimpinan NGO dan parti pada pilihan raya tahun 2016, kita ketepuan isu. Kerana Tok Nan pada ketika itu menumbuhkan perhatian banyak ke kawasan luar bandar, dan must remember that pengundi yang paling banyak di kawasan luar bandar. Sebab itu kita daripada luar bandar pada ketika itu tidak mempunyai isu yang banyak.
Saya faham, but you are not answering the question. The question is, why don't you guys get together and form a Sarawak-based opposition rather than facing the PBB as a Malayan-based opposition? That is the question.
No, that is
why
the
join
main
National
issue.
Party?
That is the main issues that belum selesai. Mengapa kita harus bergabung dengan Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim dan kepimpinan di pusat? Kerana
okay, the other Abang.
federal,
Let me give the other Abang. I'm sorry.
In fact, I have mentioned this thing in one of my small video. I have a small video on this.
Okay.
I tell you, when you are already in Malaysia, you must be in a big scale field, not in your own kampung punya padang. You see? So when I am in a bigger party like say Amanah or PKR, I can take the president of my party. But when I'm in PBB, how can I take the president of UMNO? Who is president of Bersatu now, which is you cannot check because sometimes you have to adjust to them. So basically, to me, you must play a bigger field game. So when to the local image, to me, it is not something of relevance to sometimes. And then to me also, something that people say you bring in the Malayan culture of politics, not the Sarawak tolerance culture. To me, it depends on ourselves. Like us now, I don't hit the YB under their belt. We talk on the data. We talk on the issues. We talk on what we see on the ground. Be fair, and basically we must base on a national party because we can play on a bigger field and we can even change who is the prime minister.
Okay. Norman, What about this view, Norman, that the only way to beat PBB is also to play the game of Sarawak versus Sarawak?
I think we've seen that how it works in Sabah. Obviously, of course, we're going to say Sabah and Sarawak kind of politics would be different. But when you actually think about, when you want to play at the same level field, right, you want to bring in that branding. If you can't actually come together as a state-based kind of party to challenge GPS, it will be a difficult one, because at the end of the day, it will be easier for PBB as well as GPS to carry around the propaganda of answering back and say, see, as GPS, we are a state-based party, but you are a national party, but you have to answer to the HQ leaders in KL. So then again, it doesn't really sell with the voters at this moment. I think I would agree with the idea of, if they were to form a state-based opposition party, they may likely have a larger chance to challenge GPS in a short term. In a long term, later on, then it will be formalized as a national party, because that's what happened in Warisan. Warisan managed to wrest the power from UMNO in Sabah in the 2018 election. So a state-based kind of opposition will actually give them a more support, and the branding will be a lot easier to go around to sell to the voters.
All right, thank you, Norman. So we've come to the end of this really interesting forum. I think we've covered a lot of grounds. I think we spent a bit of time talking about PBB. Also, we spent a bit of time talking about the future. So I'll give each of you 2 minutes to summarize or maybe make final comments. YB?
Okay, thank you. Once again, I would like to thank Prof James, Abang Zul, Abang Halil, and Rahman for being such a sporting panelist. And of course, like I said, I come from the younger generation of, although I'm not that young anymore, I come from a younger generation, PBB, and we look at politics slightly, not different, slightly at a tilt or a different angle from our leaders. And we have been educated by the leaders, and their education does not really rely on how things work before. It's about how things work now and how things going to work in the future. So that's why I'm proud to say I'm from PBB, and I'm convinced that still, if you give the best to the people, and you will be there leading the people. Thank you once again.
Terima kasih, YB. Abang Zul, 2 minutes.
Terima kasih James, terima kasih YB, terima kasih semua. Dan saya melihat dalam pilihan raya yang akan datang, kita masih perlu melawan dan mengharap kemenangan untuk mewujudkan checks and balance di kawasan Melayu Melanau yang akan datang. Thank you.
Okay, terima kasih. The other Abang? You have to unmute. Unmute. Okay.
Okay, is it okay?
Yeah, boleh. Go ahead.
Okay, basically for me, very shortly, I would say this. I'm in politics now. To me, I'm not interested in the changes, this coming change. I'm more interested in the change in what 5 or 10 years from now. If PBB doesn't change itself, if it doesn't revamp or change itself, I'm believing in grouping a young group of Malays who want to go for change. So to me, COVID-19 is helping me a bit. Really to me. And then basically, voters 18 years old is helping me a bit. And to me, I'm not in the front line, but I want to like a group of voters, a group of young leaders who can make changes. Because we need changes now, or else we never grow. And the kampong will never get developed or going somewhere to what they have to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Norman, the last word goes to you.
Thank you. This is a very fine discussion in the afternoon, especially in the first week of our Ramadan, actually coming the second week. Yeah, when we discuss about Malay politics in Sarawak, it's usually being seen as a very big kind of patronage and hierarchical kind of politics itself. But all in all, right, although the changes at the federal level continue to be very fluid, and I think it is very dynamic, and this sort of changes will continue to trickle down towards the changes of political landscape in Sarawak. So although they are, the political elites who still continue to grip on to power, But as what Abang Halil and Abang Zul, as well as YB Fazruddin has rightly pointed out, the new trend of the young voters with more than, I think, 500,000 Sarawakians who are working over this side of the world, what they have seen over in Malaya, in West Malaysia, the changes in political changes will definitely bring about the influence of the changes of the politics in Sarawak. So I believe at the end of the day, irrespective whether they are the party in power or maybe they are in a position, you are forced to reinvent yourself in order to suit the needs of the political climate. Thanks.